All right, so for your sphere, you're going to need something circular to trace. I would just go with a cup. You want it about as wide as your hand, like I'm showing you here. Then you're just going to put it in the middle of your paper, and you're going to trace around that circle. Pretty simple. Then from there, you're going to draw a border around the circle to create a square. And you can use your straight edge, a ruler, whatever you have. I would recommend making your border about 2 fingers width away from the circle. So you see me there, I just kind of measured 2 fingers, drew a line, doesn't have to be anything exact. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my other sides. I'm going to just measure about 2 fingers away from the edge of the circle, giving myself my little marks, measuring them all together at the start. So that way I've got my marks, and then I can just go in with my ruler or my straight edge. Try to make it pretty square, so watch those corners to make sure they're more 90 degrees. Repeat that on all 4 sides. Again, it does not have to be an exact measurement. We're just going for something close to a square with a circle in the middle that has a pretty decent sized border around. Okay, now you're going to draw your horizon line. The horizon line is just the line that indicates what the sphere is going to be sitting on, separates the background from the surface that it's sitting on. You can make yours at an angle like I'm doing. You can also do it horizontal if you want, like it's shown in the slides. It's really up to you, but there's mine. Okay, and that's the setup for the drawing. Now comes the actual difficult part, and that is the shading. So the first thing you need to decide is where your light source is coming from. So up here in the corner, I'm drawing my little sun to indicate the light source. And I'm just going to write light source, just so that way I remember so that you know where the light source is coming from. Okay, that light source, if it were to shine down on that ball, would hit right about there, and that's going to be our highlight. Okay, one of our vocab words. Okay, and from there, the light is going to transition down around the form of the sphere. That's going to keep circling around the form, okay? So goes around in a circular fashion. It does not go straight across. If you do your shading going straight across with your transitions, it's not going to be believable that the object is round. The light has to follow the roundness of the object. So here I'm starting with my lightest value. You want to leave that very top highlight as your level 1. So you're going to leave that your white, and then you're going to start transitioning into your other values, going with number 2. And there I'm showing you that when I'm doing my shading, I'm just doing little circular motions. And you want to do those very light, so that helps blend with the pencil. I'm also using the edge of my wood pencil. With the edge of the wood pencil, that's something that a mechanical pencil doesn't offer you because your lead is just going to keep breaking. So little circles, just kind of going around, building up those values, taking those values out. Further away you get from the highlight, you can start to increase the darkness of your value. And you want to remember the values that you have on your value scale. So we're starting with the lightest value being number 1 in the very top, and then moving into our level 2 values. And then as we continue down, we're going to end up adding our additional levels of values. So now we can go into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and eventually 8 as you move down the sphere. But again, start light because you can always build with your values. You can't always take away. It's very hard to reduce the amount of graphite you've put down, but it's very easy just to add additional layers. You want to go right up to that edge. If you're not going clear to your edge, it's not going to be as believable. You can see here I'm starting to add more of that level 3 value in there. And again, I want to make sure that I keep curving it around the object so I'm following the contour of the object. It is a sphere, so it has that rounded look. It's not going to go straight across. It's going to continue to follow the form. Now I'm getting in more to the level 4, getting a little bit darker, and we're just going to continue to build those values. In little circles, just going around following where the light source would be coming from, getting that shadow in there, because now if we start to come around, that's going to be the darker area. Again, here I'm also turning my paper because again, I'm going with what's easiest for the natural movement of my hand. Your hand naturally moves in an arc, And if you continue to just move the paper, you'll see there your hand moves like that arc shape. So it's easier if you just rotate the paper versus trying to make your hand conform to the direction of the object. So rotate as you go because you want to stay nice and neat right along that edge. Building those values in. Right now I have levels 1 through 4.5 probably. And now I'm starting to go in and add more into where those core shadows are, some of those darker values. So here I'm bringing in the value scale. You can do the same thing, just take it and fold it right along the edge, and you can kind of see where your values are. If all of your values are in the mid-range and you aren't getting to the dark areas, then you need to step it up to increase that contrast. If all of your values stay in the middle range, your drawings are not going to be as realistic. You need that contrast. We can't really see the true light without the dark, and we can't have the dark without the light. Otherwise, everything looks the same. So you want to continue to build those values. Take your time. If you try to rush through this, it's not going to work out. So now I'm starting to add in where that core value is going to go, like core shadow. Putting in my darker values. Again, I'm making sure that I keep following the edge of the form, taking it up the side. Now I'm starting to add in those darker values and build that up. Okay, because that is the area, that core shadow is where light is not hitting at all. Keep blending as you go and layering those values. Blend and layer, blend and layer, blend and layer. Now I probably have it built up to about a 6. Kind of taking where I had that core shadow completely over the edge, and now I'm going back in, making the core shadow itself much darker, allowing it to stay lighter on that back side for the reflective light. The reflective light is what has bounced off the surface that it's sitting on and bounced back up onto the object. And it's those little details like that that are going to make it more believable that you have a 3D object sitting on the surface. Bringing it all the way around, blending and layering. Starting to get those core shadows more into a level 7. You're typically not going to have a level 8 all the time because you're only going to have that level 8 where things truly are black. The deepest, darkest shadows. Then bringing those darker shadows around the edge, following the surface of the sphere. As I make it darker, then I have to go back and blend. So it's not just a dark stripe. Again, darkening that core shadow. Blending the value so it's a nice smooth transition. It's a gradient value change. Remember another one of our vocabulary words. It's a gradual change from value, from the light to the dark. We should not see a stepped value in something like this, where there are distinct steps between the values. It should be gradual, or a gradient. At this point, the sphere is just about done, and I'm looking, I've got my highlight, I've got my core shadow there, and now I'm going to start to work on the background and the surface. So you want to make sure that your background and your surface are in contrast from your ball, so that way it stands out. Okay, so because the top of my ball is so much lighter than the bottom half, my background is going to be dark, and the surface of the table will end up being light. So here I'm going and I'm being very careful to not overlap onto the ball itself. But I'm getting a nice dark value down at the base and starting to blend that up. As I come around that side, Getting nice and dark right next to the sphere so that way there is contrast between the background and the sphere itself. Filling in, paying attention to the lines where I need to stay within those bounds, and then I'm blending it up. Doesn't have to be dark the entire way, but dark at the surface and dark near the areas that are going to be right next to the sphere. Initially here, I'm just blocking in those values. I'm not super worried about making it perfectly neat. Just trying to get those values in there. Again, as I get near to the sphere again, I need to darken up my values right next to it so that way the sphere doesn't blend into the background. But at this point, I'm just trying to get those values in there, get the space covered. You can always go back and neaten it up as long as you don't get too crazy with it. But notice I am going right up to the edge of the sphere. There's no white halo that's in between the background and the sphere, because in real life you don't have a border around objects, a white halo. I'm just finishing up getting all of the color or all of the value filled in there. And right now it's pretty messy. It's kind of a mess. The sphere blends in with the background. There's all those places for overlap that need to get blended, and there's definitely no contrast between the sphere and the background. I can still see my line, my outline, and that's something else we want to work on is getting rid of the outline. So you want to have clear edges, but not outlines. So I'm going in, I'm just darkening up right next to that outline. And right now it just looks like a thick outline. Okay, that's not what you want either. You don't want to just make your outlines thicker. That's not helping to blend those into the surface and to create those edges. Once you have those thicker outlines, then you can go and take and blend those out. So you'll see I'm taking that and I'm blending that out into the background value that I already have laid down there. And just blend it out. And now there's a lot more contrast between the edge of the sphere and the background itself. And the sphere is starting to pop out. So make sure it's nice and neat, nice and clean, and then blend those out. I'll do the same thing as I continue around the sphere. And notice too, I'm not smudging. Okay, I'm not taking my finger or a blending stump and smearing the graphite around. With that, you're not going to get clean, clear, crisp values. You're just going to have one big muddy puddle of medium tone grays. You're going to live in that 3 to 5 range. That's all you're going to have, and that's not going to be good for your drawings. What you want with a good realistic graphite drawing is contrast, and the only way you're going to get that is to learn to put your values down using just your pencil and varying the amount of pressure you're putting on that pencil. So there again, blending that outline out, letting it blend out into the background. Now I need to start incorporating the rest of that into the background, smoothing that out. You'll see that now the pencil is going more along the lines of the same angle that the horizon line is. So I'm keeping the marks more parallel to that horizon line, that surface line, and starting to blend that out to the background. Because you don't want just that radiating halo away from the sphere, because that's not realistic either. Just keeping the strokes going the same direction, back and forth, that same angle as the surface line, I'm showing you right there. Okay, going back and forth, keeping that parallel, and now you start to blend out the rest of that background. Now we need to work on not seeing all of that overlap and just making it nice and smooth. It's a gradual change from the darkness that's right next to the sphere into the lighter values as we move away from the sphere. Cleaning up the edges. Again, don't just go outside the line and then think, okay, I'm just going to go back and erase, because you're still going to have a hard time getting those clear-cut edges when you're going in and erasing. It's going to get a little wobbly, unless you have a special tool like an eraser shield or something like that. It's just easier if you learn to control your pencil to begin with. You'll have much better results. You see there, now everything's starting to get nice and smoothed out. Going back in, just tweaking little things here and there to kind of pop the contrast, blend things out. Okay, so as we wrap up the background, you'll see that everything's pretty well blended out now. Now we can start looking at the surface that it's sitting on. So we have the background, we have the sphere, the light is coming and hitting from that top part. And so if we're looking at the sphere itself, we're going to see that the top of the sphere is much lighter. That's why we've made the background darker. And the bottom of the sphere is much darker, so we're going to make the surface lighter. And again, right now I'm just going in, laying in like a level 2.5, maybe 3 value for the surface. Not super worried about how neat it is right now, just trying to get all that laid in there. But everything's kind of messy, so now I can kind of go back in and start to try to blend out some of those overlapping areas and just kind of neaten it up a little bit, get things nice and smooth. Again, the light is coming from the upper corner, so down right around this area is where our shadow is going to be. It's going to be the cast shadow. It's the shadow that the object casts its shadow onto the surface. So kind of planning for that, still getting everything else evened out, smoothed out, nice and neat. Now where the light comes, the light's going to hit from there, and that is where the ball is going to block the light on the surface of the table that the ball is sitting on. So that's where I'm going to start to add in that cast shadow. And the shadow should be a similar shape to the sphere itself, so it should have those rounded edges. Okay, it may be more elliptical, so more like an oval versus a circle, depending on the angle of the light. But you'll see that I'm getting in nice and dark, close to a level 8 there, right at the base of the sphere, because that's where the shadow is going to be the darkest, where the light is completely being blocked out. And then as I move the shadow outwards, then I can start to kind of fade that out a little bit, because shadows typically don't have super hard edges unless it's a super harsh light. So coming right around there, anywhere where the light would block, we're going to have the shadow. Just kind of get that shadow in there, kind of work the values, blend where you feel like it needs to blend. Just kind of make it a nice natural transition from shadow to the surface of the table. So I'm putting this part in. I'm noticing that there should still be a little bit more of that dark shadow up towards the top right in there. So I'm going to go and darken that in just a little bit, blend that out, and even that shadow out across the front there. Blend. Layer and blend, layer and blend. What you'll see as I'm finishing up, there are no longer outlines. We don't see any of those outlines that we drew, we just see our edges. So from here, the highlight comes down, the reflected light comes up, you have your cast shadow, and you have your core shadow. And there we have a finished drawing.